Hello there. Well, for generations the British public operated under a powerful social contract. It was never written on a single piece of paper, but it was understood by all. If you contributed through work, through taxes and national insurance, you would be protected in your older years. The state would provide health care, support and a dignified pension. This wasn't charity, it was earned. This belief was a product of post-war welfare states, born in the wake of the Divisive report of 1942 and implemented, would you believe, by a Labour government in 1945. It promised to eliminate 5 giant evils: want, disease, ignorance, squalor and idleness. Institutions like the NHS and state pension were not luxuries. They were viewed as essential pillars of a fair society. People paid in for decades, often without complaint, because they believed they were investing in their future and their countries. I started work in 1971. I paid national insurance every week. Now in retirement, I, and millions like me, I'm being told the pot's empty. The rules have changed. We can't afford this. We can no longer afford to keep our word. The social contract has gradually eroded, and it began slowly in the 1980s with privatisation, deregulation and the erosion of union power. In the decades that followed, governments of all colours continued to cut, trim, delay and dismantle. The state pension age has risen, with more increases planned. WASPy women, Women Against State Pension Inequality. They were born in the 1950s, had their pension age raised with little warning, leaving many financially stranded. Now younger people, they're told they need to work until 71's been bandied about, despite doing insecure, low-wage work without savings or private pensions. And there's plenty of people doing that, and there's many jobs that are low paid, insecure. Now, at the same time, of course, the politicians enjoy protected index-linked pensions, and that most people could never dream of. Now, this isn't simple economic necessity, it's political choice. We're told pensions are unaffordable, but hang on. Let's examine that slightly. Now, tax avoidance and evasion cost the UK's government an estimated £35 to £50 billion per year. Billions more are wasted on corporate subsidies, failed outsourcing projects and defence contracts. Meanwhile, MPs, quietly of course, increased their own pension accrual rates in the late 1990s and early 2000s, effectively giving themselves double the value compared to workers on average schemes. But the state says there's no fund. True, the UK operates on a pay-as-you-go pension system. The people were told that they were paying in for their futures. Now, if a private company changed the rules like this, they will be prosecuted. But when the state does it, it's called reform. This is more than an economic mismanagement. It's deliberately dismantling. And it's dismantling of shared responsibility in favour of individual risk. A dangerous narrative also emerges. That older people are to blame for the economic struggles, from the NHS crisis to the housing shortage. Now, this narrative is not only false and deeply divisive. Most older people used very few NHS services when they were younger. They paid taxes for 40-50 years to support it. The elderly are now being scapegoated for structural failures in the system. Failures caused not by age, but by underfunding, privatisation and mismanagement. This fuels intergenerational resentment, deflecting blame from the real issues, a political class that abandon long-term responsibility in favour of the short-term votes and donor appeasement. The divide between generations is not natural, it's engineered. Divide and distract is a time-honoured tactic to control. The ultra-wealthy just don't hold economic power. They understand psychological influence. They hire psychologists and behavioural scientists to shape things such as advertising and product launches. Create scarcity and FOMO, that's fear of missing out, to pressure people into constant consumption. Promote unattainable lifestyles that keep people working, spending and never feeling secure. Even kids are targeted. You know, the £100 designer trainers, fast fashion, tech gadgets. This begins a cycle of status anxiety, dependency and distraction. Meanwhile, real financial education, critical thinking and civic awareness are systematically underfunded or totally ignored. But we've now got even more of a challenge, because artificial intelligence and automation, millions of jobs from factory work to accounting, call centres and even healthcare are at risk now. If work disappears, who pays the taxes that fund the pensions, the NHS and indeed the welfare? This is where proposals like universal basic income come in. They're providing everyone with a base income, regardless of work. Now, critics say it's unaffordable, yet billions are lost annually in tax loopholes. Billions. Billions and more are added to private firms with little oversight. And we already subsidise poverty wages through tax credits and universal credits. So the problem isn't money, it's priorities. Without bold planning, we risk a society where the wealthy own the technology, the jobs disappear and the rest live precariously on handouts. Or worse of all, forgotten altogether. No, we must demand more than reform. We need transformation. Ring-fence national insurance, legally protect it for pensions, NHS and welfare. Close loopholes, tax loopholes, and enforce proper taxation on multinational corporations and the ultra wealthy. Attempt to rebuild trust by honouring pension promises, especially to those who have paid in for decades. Invest in people, not just markets. Free education, job transition support, mental health and community infrastructure. And prepare for automation with serious public consultation on UBI, tax on robots and human-centred digital future. Above all, we must rebuild the social contract, not as a nostalgic idea, but as a real enforceable agreement between people and power. So many people feel powerless, but we're not. We need to speak out in communities, on social media, in the workplace, organise through unions, pensioners groups and citizens campaigns. We need to educate ourselves and others about what's really happening. And when we vote not just for parties, but for policies that protect future generations and honour past contributions. Now, power's not going to surrender itself, but it listens when it fears losing control. Now, this is not just a political issue, it's a moral one. We're watching a nation break its promises to its own people, to its workers, its elderly and its children. Some say, well, that's how it is. But it doesn't have to be like that. This country can no longer keep the promises that a lifetime of work earns you in dignity. Then it's not just the pensions that are broken, is it? Let us not accept this quietly. Let's speak out, act and demand better for ourselves, for each other and for the generations still to come. In the meantime, take care. Bye now.